Nau mai, haere mai, piki mai, kaki mai, kia ora e te iwi, and welcome to 30 with me, Guyon Espiner. We do 30 minutes with one guest and no cut, so what we record is what you get. Don McGlashan is one of our greatest musicians and songwriters, with hits such as Dominion Road and Anchor Me, reaching iconic status in Aotearoa. But this is a legacy which stretches back to the scratchy post-punk of Blam, Blam, Blam in the early 80s, the percussive eccentricity of From Scratch, the musical comedy of The Front Lawn, and the gorgeous pop melodies and reflective genius of the Mutton Birds. Don McGlashan was inducted into the New Zealand Music Hall of Fame in 2023, and a documentary about his life and his music called Anchor Me is due for cinema release in January 2026. So let's hit play. 30 minutes with Don McGlashan. Don McGlashan, welcome to 30.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, thanks very much for coming. And let's start with the documentary. I've watched it. It's a great watch. I'm wondering how you felt and reacted to being in it and watching it, presuming that you did. Are you someone who can sort of let the legacy sink in, or you sort of wanted to rush on to the next thing?
I tell the truth, I didn't think it was going to be made. So Shirley Horrocks got in touch with me. I like her work a lot. You know, the beautiful documentary about my mate John Reynolds, the painter, and there's a lovely one about Alan Curnow, the poet. So when she got in touch with me, you know, it was a good excuse for a cup of coffee. But I've had so many experiences over the past few years where people have wanted to make a documentary, but it hasn't been funded. So I kind of didn't really expect it to happen. But Shirley is incredibly passionate and committed, and she made it happen. So I was kind of in shock, I must admit. And I went along to see it. They'd shown me a very early draft, which seemed to have an awful lot of me talking, and I wasn't feeling too good about that. But it all brushed up really well. I was really thrilled that it had so much lovely footage of other bands and posters and just a sense of the colour and life of that period.
Well, let's get into some of that, because it is fascinating. It goes back to the early Blam, Blam, Blam days.
Yeah.
There is no depression in New Zealand. There are no sheep on our farms, which became a kind of a protest anthem. Take us back there to the vibe and the feel of that time and what the music scene was like.
There was a sense, I don't know, a lot of, there was at school, you know, just a little bit older than me at school, and the other Blams who all went to the same Westlake Boys High School. There was a guy called Richard von Sturmer, who was a brilliant kind of multimedia artist, still is, essentially a poet who sort of burst onto the scene wanting to do all these other things. And he had a band called The Plague, and they used to perform sometimes naked in painted colours, painted with house paint, and that kind of set the tone. And around that same time, there were similar kinds of music theatre outfits like Red Mole, Rats Theatrics, Debbie and the Dum Dums, a bunch of really cool things happening. A lot of it was in opposition or in response to the kind of stultifying greyness of the Muldoon years.
Yes, because it is the Muldoon years, isn't it? 75 through to 84. You got the Springbok Tour in 81.
Yep. And the Springbok Tour, There Is No Depression in New Zealand, which was a song that Richard wrote the lyrics for, and it became a Blam song. That became a kind of unofficial song about the tour, even though it wasn't written. It was written before the tour sort of came about.
You were a protester, I believe.
Yeah. I was incredibly ineffectual because I'm little, and I can remember being in a crowd of protesters, and there was a standoff, and the Red Squad were all there, all huge beefy men, you know, with batons, and for some reason I ran out from the crowd and booted one of them in the bum. I still don't know why I did that. And then I kind of went, we both looked at each other. He looked at me as if he'd just like a mosquito had just sort of touched him, you know. And I looked at him sort of going, I'm not sure what to do now. So I ran back into the crowd and sort of waited. And then later on, they were going around doing individual arrests, and they just pointed at me and pulled me out. And I was handcuffed and led under the stands of the test so we could actually hear the test going on. And then
This is Eden Park, presumably. Yeah.
Eden Park, sorry, yeah. And then we were taken to Central Police Station for processing, and I ended up spending the whole evening there with my English lecturer. He was in the cell with me, a really cool guy. He's not with us anymore, a guy called Sebastian Black, and we talked about Beckett. And I think it's probably, I mean, it's arrogant to say this, but I think it's probably the first time that anybody talked about Beckett in that particular
Samuel
cell.
Beckett.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's quite a story. So you were Blam at this point. In terms of the music scene, I mean, are you getting paid well for these gigs or what?
No, God no. No, we just hit the road without even thinking about it. Tim, the bass player, has this. It comes from this long, marvelous sort of Irish gift of the gab type lineage, and he just loved to ring people up and organize gigs. And so we had these gigs. Some of them were, it was a kind of dying gasp of the hotel corporation kind of era. Nick Bollinger talks about it really well in his book.
Because the government owned the tourism hotel corporation, didn't they? So they ran the tourist industry and
so
the
you
hotels.
could do gigs. You could run around the country doing those gigs.
What did they pay you in? Did they?
Oh, sometimes very little. We certainly didn't get a percentage of the whole take. I remember one pub owner coming up to us and said, "You're $1,000 band now." And we said, "What? You're going to give us $1,000?" And he said, "No, of course not. But your punters drank $1,000." And we were like, "Is that good?" And he said, "Yeah, it's good." And then he gave us, I think, 3 jugs of. There's a thing that they used to do in those days called depth charges.
Look, I remember the depth charge.
Yeah.
See if I've got this right. So I remember buying them in the Valley Inn in Christchurch. You get a jug of beer, and wouldn't they chuck a shot glass of Drambuie into it? And we thought that was very sophisticated.
Well, we thought it was the big time.
Yeah.
And that was our bonus. We got a little bit of money, maybe a few $100 for actually doing the gig, and then the pub paid to give us, depth charges. So.
But for you, this wasn't sort of 3 chords and the truth stuff for you, was it? I mean, you were a proper musician. You'd studied music at university, right?
Yeah.
And you'd learnt to play. I mean, I've watched you play euphonium on stage. Not many rock musos play a euphonium.
No, there's a reason for that. It's an uncool instrument, and I tried to make it cool and I failed. But yeah, I was kind of expanding in all directions at once. I learnt the cello when I was little. I started learning percussion. I'd already been working with Phil Dadson in From Scratch, so that was this whole kind of like marvelous sort of mathematical percussion / sculpture ensemble that I was in. So, that was really giving me lots to think about. I was also, I guess, unlike other punky type people in those days, I didn't go home and take drugs and lie on the floor with the room spinning, listening to The Clash. I went home and listened to Bruckner and Mahler because I was a French horn player. But when the Blams happened and we started touring the country, it was kind of too big a thing to ignore. It was like everything else in my life had to sort of go away, because here we were in a clapped out van playing to different sets of people every night. Just playing our hearts out, and the audience were going crazy, and it was kind of like, this is where I belong. This is my home.
And then we have the front lawn, which was almost like a forerunner to Flight of the Conchords in a way, yeah.
Well, they are gracious enough to say that they came along to front lawn gigs and got some ideas from that. Brett used to be was he a bouncer? Was he a what do you call people who show people to their seats in theatres?
Like an usher.
An usher, right. He was an usher. I think he's too little to be a bouncer, I think. And too nice. But when we would play the Depot in Wellington, he would come along and do that gig, and I think he saw us doing this weird stuff, and it maybe planted a seed in there.
That was social commentary too, wasn't it, in a way?
Yeah, when we started, we took ourselves terribly seriously. We didn't think we were going to be a comedy act. We thought we were working with what it means to be from this weird country at the bottom of the world. What does ritual mean? You know, we had a lot of pieces. We had that piece about breakfast, which is kind of about what is ritual. And so we had all these sort of highfalutin ideas. And then when we got in front of people, they laughed. So we thought, well, we could run with this. And that's why we turned into a comedy group.
Right. So the audience decided that it was comedy more than
pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I was reminded of, and a lot of your songwriting, I'm reminded of the Sam Hunt quote where he talks about the cosmic of the commonplace.
Yep.
And that's kind of seems to be what you were grasping for.
Making the ordinary extraordinary. I think also, I mean, Harry has that in his DNA. His dad was a poet. And I think when he was an actor, he got so sick of the received notion in those days that if you were a New Zealand actor, you did English plays and you put on a posh accent and you talked down to the people who'd come to see you. That was you know, Harry's kind of description of what happened when you're an actor. So when he came back to New Zealand, he just wanted to look at how did we speak, how do Kiwis act, you know, and who are we?
So you get g'day mate. How you
that
going?
Thing, yeah.
Haven't seen you for a while. And you sort of riff off that.
And I had the same thing. The same sort of epiphany happened to me, but from a different direction, because I went in New York. I went to see Laurie Anderson, and one of the first things that you see in that big show, the United States, is the curtain comes up and there's a wall socket, just a power socket, but blown up enormous. And in America, the power sockets have like two lines and a circle. So it just looked like this horrific face, you know, this vast face. And so, you know, looking hard at things that you normally overlook became a big thing for me. And so when we came back, we both arrived back in New Zealand together, Harry and I, and we kind of knew what we wanted to do. We didn't know what it was going to be like. Initially, we sort of had all these sketches, and we said, what are they about? And we'd said, well, they're kind of about being men. They're about being men in New Zealand. And for a minute there, a nanosecond, we were going to call the group the Y-Fronts. I'm so glad we didn't. That would have been just appalling. We'd never have lived it down. But
you talked about looking hard at things that we overlook.
Yeah.
And you take that songwriting into the Mutton Birds too in the 1990s. Beautiful pop songs in some regards, but quirky and slightly mysterious. I mean, The Heater. A song about a guy who buys a heater which starts to talk to him and ask him to plug him in. I mean, that's...
Not that commercial. I think it used to drive the record companies crazy, and I think that's why I never really fitted in the music industry. And that was why I was quite...
Do you feel that?
Yeah, all the time. I always felt like a very square peg in a very round hole. But the cool thing about being in England, now that I look back on it, you know, when we were there, I just felt, I'm not churning out these pop songs that the record company wants, and the band we're all kind of struggling. We don't have much money. It's all going to go pear-shaped. But looking back on it, I sort of cheer on those people. You know, like we're bringing these weird songs into this environment where everything was really, you know, aimed at 3-minute pop songs, and Blur and Oasis were the big bands.
Yes, it was Britpop and lad culture and things, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was all nothing like what we were about, but we got an audience, you know, and I wasn't capable of writing anything else. That was a good thing to find out. It's a good thing to go to a place where everybody's saying, why don't you just sort of backpedal on the personal sort of dreamlike songs, the strange songs, songs about heaters, and just write a love song, you know, rhyme Moon and June and see what happens, you know. And I just couldn't do it.
Yeah. Do you get a sense of how much that your songs connect with people though, because they really ground us and give us a sense of place? Dominion Road, for example, I remember moving from Christchurch to Auckland in 1994 to take my first journalism job. I literally had a map and a mini, and I took this flat because it was halfway down Dominion Road. It was a crap flat, so I can't thank you for that. But you know, these are the impacts that your songs are having on people. Do you ever think about that?
Yeah, I grew up listening to the Kinks and you know, the Kinks singing about Muswell Hill and Elvis singing about Louisiana, you know, and none of those, I didn't have any like pictures to go with those words, but I thought that's really cool, you know. And when I finally go to London, you know, and I walk down Ladbroke Grove and a Van Morrison song comes into my head, or I'm in New York, you know, and I turn down 8th Avenue and a Steely Dan song comes into my head, which mentions 8th Avenue. I thought, what a cool thing to add that extra shade, that extra bit of colour to that bit of landscape with a song. And wouldn't it be cool if one day somebody went to Dominion Road and thought differently about that place because of the song I'd written? And I thought, I didn't think, it wasn't like a crusade to write lots of songs about New Zealand places, but because I've always just felt I might write better if I worked with what I knew. So, but it's such a blast when people come up to me and say, you know, I know the landscape that you're talking about. There's the song called White Valiant, which is a lot about landscape. And I get lots of people coming up to me and saying, I know exactly the hills you're talking about, and I know the quarry, you know, and I can't argue with them. It might not be the quarry I was thinking of, but it's their quarry.
Yeah. And then we're on Takapuna Beach in Andy.
Yep.
Such a sad and beautiful song. Tell us the story of that song.
Well, we lost my brother when I was 15 and he was 20. He was drowned in a boating accident with two of his friends, right near the island where, when I was little, we spent all our holidays. So it was a really important place for us. In the front, I guess when it happened, I kind of was busy kind of expanding in all directions at once and being a musician in people's bands and learning classical music, and I didn't really stop to think about it. And then when we started the Front Lawn, I would bring these sketches of songs in to work out what we're going to do with them. Are they going to be a sketch or a little film or just a song or whatever? And Andy had a whole bunch of other story around it. The initial sketches, it was more about Rogernomics. It was about the hinterland of New Zealand being sort of torn apart, about buildings going up made of glass, a sense of sort of shallowness and venality everywhere, you know. And the song was largely about that, but it had this other bit about brothers and about loss, and about, there was a reveal at the end which suggested that the brother wasn't just feckless and didn't turn up, he just wasn't there. And I didn't really understand it. And Harry said, when he really thought about the song, he said, well, why don't you just take away all that scaffolding? Why don't you just make it about your brother? And then, like, you know, then we can all get some sleep, you know? And he was right, and I did. I took away most of it. There's still some bits in there that belong to the old story.
In that song, there's the refrain, Andy, don't keep your distance from me.
Yeah.
What are you getting at there?
Well, I think it's a song about longing, and it's about, it's like, instead of saying I miss you, it's saying you're out there, I want you to still be in my life. And different, but I've always been a bit different from the rest of the family in that they have lots of pictures of my brother. You know, he was just beloved.
He's 20.
Hilarious guy, you know.
20, you're 15.
Yeah, and I looked up to him like anything. He was this fabulous sportsman and a really funny man. And but everybody else has pictures of him all over their houses, and I never did. And I couldn't understand it, why. But I think probably that song was like my way of holding him in my heart. And I always worried about playing it live. I changed the name, you know, so because he wasn't called Andy, you know, and I also went through stages of not performing it because I thought I thought it wouldn't be fair on my family, it wouldn't be fair on the families of the other people that were lost in the same accident. So I've sort of been torn about that song over the years, but I'm glad I kept at it, I think, because it's one of those songs that I don't quite understand. And one of the cool things in Shirley Horrocks' documentary about Alan Curnow, the poet, is when he says there's got to be something hidden in every poem, even from the poet. I think that's beautiful, and I'm sort of learning to not understand my work.
Well, let's talk a little more about that, because I find process fascinating. I mean, you develop characters in your writing. I think you're a sort of inveterate journaler, aren't you? You keep journals, and you sort of develop these characters. Is that how it works? So you're not riffing away and finding a cool guitar hook and then putting songs and melody onto it. You're more developing. You're a storyteller, really, aren't you?
If I just riffed away at the guitar and then sang "Gonna Love You Baby" all night long, I'd be so rich. Well, I wouldn't. I mean, I'd be richer.
Well, you
I
might
suppose,
be.
I don't know. But no, somebody once said I was a short story writer who just shoehorned those short stories into a song, and if that's true, I'm cool with that, because I think that, some of the interesting things happen at the edge of a field. Like there's songwriting and there's people who write, come on Barbie, let's go party, and then right at the edges there's weirdos who write long stories about white valiants and heaters and that sort of stuff, but they still want them to be pop songs. And I still care about pop music. I want the song to be sort of reasonably economical. I love the short kind of pop song, succinct pop song, but just the subject matter, I tend to be drawn towards stuff that's more crunchy, more interesting.
Yes. I mean, you're often taking things obliquely too. With A Thing Well Made, you're actually looking at the Aramoana shooting.
Yep.
But you're looking at it from the viewpoint of a gun shop owner who sold the weapon to David Gray. Is that the...
Yep, that's it. That was the only way I could get in. I wanted to write a song about that, and then, protest songs or songs about issues. The best ones, the simplest ones, are just signposts. They're visible. They've got a clear message. They've usually got a call to action in them, like Free Nelson Mandela or something like that. So that song could have been a song which had a bit of the anger and grief of the thing, and then a chorus that says, "Put the guns in a pile and burn them, all of them." I was going to do something like that, but I couldn't make it that simple. And more when I worked on it, I wanted it to be about somebody who I could identify with. And the gun shop owner, I'm a bloke. I like guitars. I like motorbikes. The idea of being in a space that feels safe because it's surrounded by the smell of wood and these polished things which are cool, and make you feel good when you hold them. I can understand how somebody could retreat into that world away from the argument with his wife. And so that's where the song got going. As soon as I kind of realized who it was and the voice he might speak in, that song kind of wrote itself.
With the Mutton Birds, you got pretty big in London in the 1990s. We did touch briefly on that. I think you made 4 albums with the Mutton Birds in the end, didn't you? That must have been tough though, touring the whole life of a musician. And you said earlier in the interview that you never really felt you fitted into that.
No. I mean, we were weird because we were Antipodeans anyway. There's a strangeness about us. We don't quite fit in to the class structure of English society. But the sense that we were really doing it, that we were kind of living the dream and getting in the van and going to Belgium and then getting in the van and going to Dublin, we would do that sort of crazy stuff, because if you don't do it, the record company will say, well, there's 15 younger bands that will do it if you don't do it. So we worked really hard. And there's this sort of ludicrous, bizarre stuff that happened all the time. Every day there'd be stupid things like at one stage we got a call, the manager called us and said, Michael Stipe from REM has personally asked you to come in and open for them in Prague, but you've got to get in the van now. Right now, go, and then we got in the van and we got sort of we got to the Channel Tunnel or something, and then we found out that it had been turned. It had all evaporated, you know. And then later on we found out that Michael Stipe didn't know us from a bar of soap. He hadn't asked us, you know, for us in person. What happens is sometimes record companies go, there's this band playing over here. If we pay them some money, they might get our band on as a support act. And so there was a big negotiation going on between our management and the record company about how much money we were going to pay to get on the bill. And obviously that was kept from us because we would have said, no, we don't want to do that. But that sort of chicanery and fraudulent behaviour happened all the bloody time.
Anchor Me was one of the big songs of the Mutton Birds. And it occurs to me actually listening to you too and the Andy song. I mean, water is a big thing in your music, eh? You're a sailor,
Yep.
you grew up on the shore.
Yep. I do, but certainly New Zealanders have this amazing relationship with the sea because it surrounds us. We can never be far from it. Both lots of voyagers that came here, the brilliant Polynesian voyagers who discovered the place, you know, just was so brave, so skilled getting here. And then there was this other lot of stuff, you know, my forebears who were, you know, pushed by injustice where they came from and pulled by scammers here who offered them free land, you know. So and when they got here and they turned around and looked at this vast ocean that they'd came across, they sort of worshipped it in a way, but also turned away from it. You see all those little towns down in the South Island where the main town kind of turns away from the sea, like Oamaru, places like that. And I always feel that, I don't know, when I'm writing a song, the sea wants to get in. You know, if I'm writing a song, there I am in the second verse, and there's going to be something about a river or the body of water or something like that. I don't know where that's from. Sometimes I keep it out. Sometimes I let it in.
Yeah, you wrote "Bathe in the River" too, didn't you?
I wrote "Bathe in the River,"
it's a beautiful song.
That's another one of those songs. Tom Waits says you kick them out of the nest and you don't know where they're going to fly to, and that's one where I couldn't have ever predicted that would be used. You know, but it would turn up in Kabahaka events. It would be, Holly Smith called me in the middle of the night once and said, "You'll never guess where I am." And I said, "Where?" And she said, I'm at Tūranga Waiwai, and it's the special meeting for handing back of the Waikato River to Tainui and working out a co-governance of the river from now on. Wow. She got asked to sing that song. Like, you know, somebody as white as me to be the tiniest part of that history make me feel really proud.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't know the Tom Waits quote, but you kick them out of the nest, you're not sure where they're going to end up. The National Party tried to use Anchor Me, I think, in the election victory of 2008.
Good on them for trying.
You didn't like that so much, did you?
No,
what was the quote?
The quote was
something involving a crayfish.
Yeah, the quote was, "I'd rather have sex with a very ugly crayfish." One of my mates came up to me afterwards and said, "I've got a bone to pick with you about what you said about the National Party," and I thought, oh, here we go. You know, I didn't know he was a Tory, but there we go. You know, and he said, "No, I think you're insulting to seafood." You know, and then he went into this long riff about how he had a long consensual relationship with the power for a really long time.
And you had your little stouts with Chris Bishop too. You had a couple of run-ins with the Nats, haven't you? That was at the.
I didn't. Yeah, that doesn't count.
At the music awards.
Yeah, that doesn't count because I didn't know who he was. I was about to go on stage and I was standing up by the wall, and somebody said, "There's an empty seat over there." So I went and sat down, and I heard all this fury and somebody complaining, and then Stan Walker did his big piece, which with a lot of hikoi imagery and a lot of flags waving, and the whole audience stood up. It was just marvelous, heartfelt moment. And there was somebody yelling, "What a load of crap! This is performative! What a load of bullshit!" You know. And I thought, you know, I've had 40 years or so of dealing with unruly hecklers in New Zealand. I just thought, that's what's going on, you know. I didn't know who it was. So I turned around and said, "Shut up, you dickhead." And then he looked at me and said, "What'd you say to me?" And I realized who it was. And the only thing I could do was really just repeat myself. So I said, "Shut up, you dickhead," in as reasonable a way as I could have said, shut up, you honourable dickhead. I didn't have the presence of mind to say that, but I really had no idea who it was. I thought he was just an out of control and somewhat entitled heckler.
There's a strand of politics in you then, isn't there? It's not overtly in your music, but
I think it's pretty overt. I think if you listen to a song like Toy Factory Fire, that's I've never been good at writing those straight up.
It's not Billy Bragg, but
it's not Billy Bragg. It's not Billy Bragg, but it's my answer to people that say the market will look after you, because basically that song says, if you're a consumer, you've got no way of fighting back against people with deep enough pockets to hide their bad behaviour. So companies that do bad stuff can hide it from you, and that's why we need governments to look after us. And it doesn't mean we're pathetic. It doesn't mean we're sort of we lack some sort of fibre. It just means that most of us don't spend every day 24/7 trying to increase our wealth. A huge number of us in the world, we do our jobs as well as we can. We pour all our extra energy into our kids and our families and our communities, and we send people to Wellington to represent us, to protect us from what companies might do to us. And that's what Toy Factory Fire is about. It's about this head of publicity for a big toy factory. They've outsourced all their work to Thailand or somewhere, and there's a big fire, and he manages to shut down all of the images that come out of that terrible tragedy. And by doing so, he's helping the bottom line of that company. And I guess that's my answer to that. It's not Free Nelson Mandela. It's not Billy Bragg, as you say, but it's best I can do.
It's more than good enough. And thank you so much for your time today. Really
That's it.
And loved it. That's
I'm disappointed. I've enjoyed this.
That was 30 minutes with Don McGlashan. And this is 30 with me, Guyon Espiner. And we'll catch you next time. Ka kite.